Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Philip, and I'd like to start off today by making us reflect a little bit on what we consider to be design. To me, design is most definitely a Wiener armchair. It's also Arne Jacobsen's Bella Vista condos. It's this beautiful concert hall that we're sitting in, the seats that we are sitting in, and it's Ganni's eye-catching dresses. For many, design is a distinctive product. But can design also be more than that? Some would argue that it's also floor plans, that it's road networks, that it's online user surveys, poll logistics in democratic elections, that it's global value chains, consumer goods, systems, and solutions. Today, I'd like to talk about how I think we need to expand our understanding of design even further to cope with the challenges we're facing as a global society. And I need you all to be a little imaginative. When I first got an interest in design, something special started to happen with my imagination. Studying the smallest details on a lowercase g gradually made me realize that everything that surrounds us have been shaped and built by someone. It was quite a profound feeling realizing that as a designer, you have the potential to shape the world as you want it. And I've always been a little bit of a daydreamer. So at this point in time, I started to dream big about what was possible. I started dreaming of becoming an architect. Shaping buildings and societies for decades to come must be one of the most meaningful ways of working with design, I thought. So as I finished high school, I applied for this Danish School of Architecture with great excitement. I took all the exams, I waited for the letter, and then I didn't get in. But the second time around, I had prepared myself a little better and also applied for courses within graphic design. And I didn't get into architecture school the second time around either, but I did manage to get into a course in graphic design. And with a little bit of disappointment, I comforted myself with the fact that I wouldn't have the patience to be an architect anyway. I mean, waiting 12 years for your sketch to be realized, only to figure out that you have moved on aesthetically, that sounds like quite a nightmare. And you have heard all these stories about famous architects building wonderful structures, only to jump out of the window as they've realized that there's a small flaw in the final construction. That future didn't really seem like the one I had planned for. So graphic design it was, and back in 2009, when I started studying design, there was a new movement within design emerging. Some of you might have heard it. For those of you who haven't, you've definitely seen it filling offices around the world with Post-its. It was a concept called design thinking. This trend, this way of working, introduced a set of tools for everybody to work with innovation. And it made people outside of design realize its potential. You saw organizations like Apple implementing this way of working with great success and becoming the biggest company in the world. So naturally, I was really excited about being part of this movement. And I praised design thinking as not just a way to view my profession, but also a way to view the world. Everything could be user-centered, optimized, iterated, and innovated. As long as you put the user in the center, you would be rewarded with success. But today, 10 years later, I'm starting to realize what I think is becoming evident to us all. That our obsession with user needs, personas, user journeys, and target markets have created a world of too many things. User-friendly objects flooding our oceans while we're cutting down forests to make more. And tomorrow, we are celebrating Denmark's Overshoot Day, the day where we have spent our total annual CO2 budget 9 months before we should. So it's pretty evident that the world as we know it has to change for good. We need to go from designing for people to start designing for the planet. We need to go from thinking of customers of tomorrow to start thinking about leaving things better for the future generations. And we need to do it fast. Creating a regenerative economy by 2050 is the greatest design challenge that we have ever faced as a human society. And it suggests an all-encompassing solution, something that all 7 billion people on the planet are a part of, where we need to collaborate, where we need to reframe our way of sourcing energy, our way of transporting and exchanging goods. We'll also need to figure out what we'll do with the food system, how we're all going to get food, what we'll do with all the waste that we produce, all the while we restore resilience in nature and bring back biodiversity. That can seem like quite a mouthful. So how do we even get started? And is it even possible to change this much, this fast? Change can be quite a scary thing, especially for those who are accustomed to the old. And at the same time, we are seeing a new generation coming in, introducing a concept called climate anxiety, being scared on the lack of action on change. So one could argue that what we are most in lack of, in fact, is hope. Hope that we can overcome the challenge we're now facing as a society. And while design thinking has given us a way to democratize the practice of design, the type of solutions that we have seen have mostly been incremental. What we need now are solutions that are more profound and more holistic in their concepts than we allow ourselves to imagine. So we need to expand our understanding of design. And this is what I'd like to talk a little bit about. And as we'll see, maybe draw some inspiration from approaches outside of the traditional field of design. This is a drawing of a regenerative building drawn and imagined almost 100 years ago by the famous Danish architect Arne Jacobsen. This project was called House of the Future, and it illustrates a dream of an ecosystem, a vision for how you could build better housing in the future. A future where apparently we are flying all around in helicopters. But besides that, a future that certainly raised a lot of eyebrows when it was presented. But looking at it today, I think maybe besides the helicopters, that we can agree that it's something that doesn't seem too far from fiction. And speaking of fiction, science fiction has actually proven to become good business. We are seeing an increasingly number of companies starting to use science fiction as a way to provoke a new way of thinking. To give you an example, this is Apple back in 1987, when they launched a 5-minute video of what they imagined could be possible to do one day. A personal assistant in the form of a tablet that could keep track of your appointments. Maybe that sounds a little familiar. But back then, that was quite a dreamy vision, quite far-fetched. And funnily enough, this vision that they came up with at this point was actually inspired by a science fiction novel written 20 years earlier that some of you might know, called Space Odyssey. So fiction and daydreaming can certainly inspire innovation. But can it also do more than that? After the Second World War, when all belief in humanity was lost, John F. Kennedy, the President of the United States, was tasked with quite a challenging brief. How do we bring back hope and belief in the future? And after spending a bit of time with his brother, they came up with quite a simple, but definitely quite bold idea: to introduce a vision of a man on the moon. Up until then, it was only in Jules Verne's fiction novels, written almost a decade before, that you would ever dream of things like this. Men and humanity going outer space, that seemed like a crazy idea. And this idea was certainly controversial. It would definitely require a lot of radical innovation. But besides that, it also did something else. It inspired hope and togetherness for everyone to believe in a brighter future by introducing thoughts that had never been thought of before, that gave humanity something extraordinary to believe in. So what's my point with all of this? Well, as a daydreaming designer trying to fit into the world of business, I'm starting to think that maybe, just maybe, one of the most productive things we can actually do is to work with storytelling and imagination to inspire more hope. Not just to inspire companies to come up with radical new innovations, but also to create a space where we can all meet and share our dreams and concerns and learn to trust one another as we grow. At my design company, ContraPoints, we design to excite people and inspire change. How do you do that, you might ask? Well, we don't have all the answers yet, but we are starting to understand that one of the first things in this process starts with the act that we saw Arne Jacobsen do with House of the Future, creating worlds and prototypes of the future that brings people together and imagine. A concept called world building that's drawing from approaches in architecture, science fiction, and in gaming. That's also why we last month launched our own self-funded Futures platform, a place where you can explore 5 different stories within the future of mobility and how they affect your lives. And as a consultancy, there's no real commercial value for us in doing a project like this. The intention is to create a conversation with organizations about talking less about how good they are and what they have already done, and start engaging more in a conversation about what future they wish to build with all their stakeholders. We believe that the most important topic going forward is to discuss the future, as we on one hand needed to inspire radical innovation, and on the other hand, to create a space to share our concerns and learn to trust one another as we grow. So to sum up, this situation we are all in, it's all in our hands. We are all in the same boat, and we have little time to work with. We need to dream big, we need to do it together, and we need to do it now. So I urge you to leave the room today with an equal feeling of urgency and optimism. Urgency to understand the material issues we are facing as a society, and optimism to get together and dream big about what kind of future you wish to create. To watch more fiction, to critique more art, and get together with your peers to discuss the future you wish to build. If we do that, we might be able to convert our concerns into hope and meet in a future that might just become reality before we know it. Thank you.